Hey guys, Ollie here, and today we're starting off our month-long celebration of all things Rare. We'll be taking a look at many of the games in the catalog leading up to the release of Rare Replay on August 4th, so be sure to subscribe and look forward to more reviews over the next month. Today though, we're kicking off Rare Month right with a look at one of the studios, and indeed the industry's most iconic duos. Yes, that means Banjo-Kazooie. This is a game that's aged wonderfully and made even better by the 2008 Xbox 360 release. It's all here, from the fantastic score to the memorable levels and the 100 jiggies you'll have to collect in this classic platforming romp. Yes, it's rare indeed that a game like Banjo-Kazooie comes along and in the 17 years since its original release hasn't aged a day. So with that in mind, should you get jiggy with it in 2015? Let's dive in. Like most platformers, Banjo-Kazooie is pretty bare bones when it comes to narrative. Your sister Tooty has been captured by the ugly witch Gruntilda in hopes of siphoning out her beauty and transferring it to herself. Cue sexy grunty game over screen. Naturally, Banjo soon finds out about this via the friendly mole bottles, and you embark on your journey into the witch's lair. So while the story remains borderline non-existent throughout, you do meet a colorful array of characters across the game's 9 worlds, such as Mumbo the Shaman, who transforms Banjo into different creatures, and Gruntilda, Gruntilda's nicer sister who loves to give you all the not-so-flattering details on the old hag, though she never shows up in the series again for whatever reason. Thus, it's with plenty of witty dialogue and wacky creatures that the game keeps you entertained, so while it's not exactly Oscar-worthy, it has no need to be, and it's lighthearted and fun no matter the circumstance. Banjo-Kazooie, like many other platformers from the 90s, very clearly draws from the formula originally laid out by Super Mario 64. Where it deviates is where the genre of collectathons was essentially born. There are just so many objects to collect in the titular platformer: notes to open doors, jiggies to unlock levels, red and yellow feathers to let you fly and turn invisible respectively, tokens for Mumbo transformations, and the list goes on and on. It's not nearly as bad as some of Rare's other platformers, such as Donkey Kong 64, or even Banjo-Tooie to a degree. But to a first-timer, the sheer number of things to do can be a little overwhelming. The second key differentiator with Banjo-Kazooie versus Mario 64 was the addition of moves. Whereas the Mario games typically had a fixed set aside from power-ups, the dynamic duo operate more like Samus Aran and learn new skills that allow them to reach new areas, sometimes even in previously unexplored reaches of levels you've already been through. However, the scope of its backtracking is fairly limited in the original and thus fairly inconsequential. Ultimately, Banjo-Kazooie is still sharp and indeed fun as ever, though certain elements such as its problematic camera don't hold up as well as others. The game, with lots of fun objectives and worlds to explore, ultimately remains a relative high point for the genre. From a presentation standpoint, not much has changed in Banjo-Kazooie since its original N64 incarnation. This is both a good and a bad thing. While composer Grant Kirkhope's original compositions are as jumpy and timeless as they've ever been, tracks like Rusty Bucket Bay and Click Clock Wood remaining some of my personal favorites, the visuals on the other hand are rather inconsistent in the Xbox 360 port. There's lots of muddy textures alongside some cleaner looking new ones. Luckily, much of the game's original aesthetic was always blocky, so this isn't as big an issue as it could be, and does little to dull the charming colors of the game, so while it's a little disappointing the visuals aren't more consistent, there's still an improvement nonetheless. While the 360 version of Banjo-Kazooie isn't the HD remake some might be dreaming of, it's still the best possible way to experience this classic platformer. With all its fun mechanics and rock-solid controls, it's still one of Rare's best. So while the visuals leave something to be desired, the original Banjo-Kazooie can still hang alongside the best of them, and remains a cornerstone of the genre I can wholeheartedly recommend. A 4.5 out of 5.